But tomorrow, it would move into the light, into courtrooms and legal filings in public record.
And Vera was going to win. The courtroom on that cold December morning wasn't just a place of law. It was a battlefield. And Vera had spent 3 months gathering weapons. Now she would use every single one. Arthur thought he'd buried her. He was about to discover she'd been digging her way out the entire time. And the first person to emerge from a grave is the one who gets to tell the story. The courtroom fell silent. Not the peaceful kind, the suffocating kind, thick with held breath and unspoken verdicts. Vera's hands lay flat on the table, perfectly still. Across from her sat Arthur, the man who'd slept beside her for 45 years. Next to him, Brenda, daughter-in-law, mother of her grandson, architect of her destruction. This was the moment. Everything. 3 months of evidence gathering, midnight recordings, stolen bank records, coerced confessions, all leading to this cold December morning in a courtroom that smelled of old wood and newer lies. Arthur wore his best suit, the charcoal one he'd bought for Michael's funeral. Carefully crafted concern etched into every line of his face. Brenda sat beside him in black, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, playing the devoted family member to perfection. They thought this was theater, that if they performed grief and worry convincingly enough, they'd win. They had no idea Vera had already written the ending.
This is an emergency hearing on the petition for guardianship of Vera Mae Thompson, filed by Arthur Thompson and Brenda Collins. I've reviewed the petition and the response. This is unusual. Counsel, are we ready to proceed?
Arthur's lawyer stood first. Gerald Mackey, expensive and slick, the kind who specialized in making uncomfortable things disappear. He'd probably handled a dozen guardianship cases just like this. Probably won them all.
Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of protecting a vulnerable adult. My client, Mr. Thompson, has watched his wife of 45 years decline over the past several months. Memory lapses, confusion, and inability to manage basic household tasks. It breaks his heart, but he believes guardianship is necessary for her safety and well-being.
Sarah Mitchell rose, smaller than Mackey, younger, but with steel in her spine that Vera had come to recognize and rely on.
Your Honor, what Mr. Thompson believes and what is actually happening are two very different things. This isn't a guardianship case. It's a fraud case, and we're prepared to prove it.
Strong words, counsel. I hope you can back them up.
We can, Your Honor. We absolutely can.
The first witness was Arthur himself. He took the stand with practiced solemnity, hand on the Bible, swearing to tell the truth. Vera watched him and felt nothing. No love, no anger. Just cold observation, like studying a stranger.
Mr. Thompson, can you describe your wife's condition over the past few months?
It's been heartbreaking. Small things at first. Forgetting where we keep the sugar. Misplacing her keys. But it got worse. She'd put salt in the sugar bowl. Forget to pick up my medications. Couldn't find stores she'd been going to for 30 years. I tried to help, to be patient, but I became genuinely concerned for her safety.
His voice trembled with false grief, the same tone he'd used when they'd buried their son. Vera had believed that grief then. She'd held his hand through Michael's funeral, thinking they were united in sorrow. Now she knew better. Arthur performed emotion, but he didn't feel it. Maybe he never had.
What steps did you take to address these concerns?
I suggested she retake her driving test, for her safety. Unfortunately, she failed. The examiner, Clifford Barnes, a professional with 20 years of experience, determined that her reflexes and judgment were too impaired for safe driving.
Lies stacked on lies, delivered with such conviction. Vera's hand moved to the folder in front of Sarah. Inside, every piece of evidence that would dismantle this performance.
And the decision to seek guardianship That must have been difficult.
The hardest decision of my life. But I can't watch the woman I love hurt herself. If guardianship means she's safe, cared for, protected from her own declining faculties, then it's what I have to do, no matter how much it hurts.
Brenda, still in the gallery, made a small sobbing sound. Perfect timing. They'd rehearsed this, probably. Coordinated their performances down to the strategic tears.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Sarah stood. Vera saw her straighten her shoulders, preparing for battle.
Mr. Thompson, you testified that your wife put salt in the sugar bowl. How do you know this happened?
I saw it. She'd switched them.
You saw her switch them? Witnessed the act itself?
A pause. Tiny, but there.
No, but I found salt where sugar should be. Who else would have?
Who else, indeed. Let me ask you something else. You mentioned your wife forgot to pick up your blood pressure medication. But didn't she actually pick it up and place it in the medicine cabinet, where you then removed it before telling her it was missing?
That's ridiculous. Why would I?
Why would you manufacture evidence of your wife's incompetence? That's an excellent question. We'll return to it. For now, let's talk about the driving test. You said Clifford Barnes is a professional examiner with 20 years of experience. How do you know Mr. Barnes?
Arthur's face shifted. Not much, but Vera saw it. The first crack in his mask.
We're acquaintances. I was his loan officer at the bank years ago.
Just acquaintances? You didn't, for instance, give his son Tyler $5,000 in September, 2 days before your wife's driving test?
The courtroom rippled. Low murmurs, quickly silenced by the judge's look.
That was a personal loan. Tyler needed help. I was in a position to provide it. That has nothing to do with...
A personal loan. Documented how? With what terms of repayment? Or was it, perhaps, payment for a service? Specifically, payment to ensure your wife would fail her driving test, further building your case for her incompetence.
Objection. Counsel is testifying, not questioning.
Overruled. But get to your point, counsel.
Your Honor, I'd like to submit into evidence bank records showing a $5,000 payment from Arthur Thompson to Tyler Barnes, dated September the 19th. I'd also like to submit a sworn affidavit from Clifford Barnes himself, admitting that he accepted this payment in exchange for deliberately failing Vera Thompson's driving examination.
Sarah placed the documents on the clerk's desk. The courtroom went completely still. Vera watched Arthur's face drain of color.
Mr. Barnes has agreed to testify fully about the bribery scheme, but perhaps more relevant to this case. Mr. Thompson, isn't it true that you've been having an affair with your daughter-in-law, Brenda Collins, for the past 8 months?
Chaos. Brenda's gasp from the gallery. Arthur lurching forward in the witness chair. The judge's gavel cracking down like thunder.
Order. Counsel, this is a serious accusation.
It is, Your Honor, and I can prove it. I'd like to play an audio recording legally obtained by Mrs. Thompson from her own home of a conversation between Mr. Thompson and Miss Collins.
Sarah pressed play on a small speaker. The courtroom filled with Arthur's voice, intimate and damning.
The driving test is tomorrow. Clifford knows what to do. Once she loses her license, we can start talking about her not being safe to live alone.
She's not alone. She has you.
For now. But the lawyer said, once we have guardianship, I can make decisions about her care. Residential care, if necessary.
How much longer do you think?
Few months, maybe. We need to be patient. Make it look natural. By spring, we could have the house sold and be on that beach in Costa Rica you keep talking about.
The recording clicked off. In the silence that followed, Vera could hear someone crying. Not her, not anymore. She'd cried all her tears in private. Now she just watched justice take its course.
There are hours more of these recordings, Your Honor. Discussions of the conspiracy to make Mrs. Thompson appear incompetent. Conversations about selling her home and using the proceeds to fund a new life together. Plans to place her in a nursing home so they could be free to pursue their relationship. This isn't guardianship. It's theft. It's elder abuse. It's fraud.
The judge's face had gone hard as stone.
Mr. Thompson, step down. Miss Collins, approach the bench.
Brenda walked forward on shaking legs. Her mascara had run. The tissue in her hand was shredded.
Miss Collins, do you deny the affair alleged in this recording?
Brenda opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Arthur, who wouldn't meet her eyes.
It's not what it sounds like.
It sounds like a conspiracy to defraud and illegally confine an elderly woman for financial gain. If you have an alternative explanation, now would be the time to provide it.
Silence. Brenda's face crumpled. She sank down onto the bench in the witness box, shoulders heaving with sobs. Real ones this time, not performed. The tears of someone watching their entire plan collapse.
Your Honor, we'd also like to submit evidence of computer searches performed by Mr. Thompson. Searches for how to fake dementia symptoms, how to obtain fraudulent medical documentation, guardianship laws in Illinois, all performed from his personal computer in the weeks leading up to this petition.
More documents, more evidence. Sarah laid it out piece by piece, building not just a defense, but a prosecution. The search histories, the emails to Brenda outlining their strategy, the blank psychiatric evaluation form he'd downloaded, planning to fill it out himself.
And finally, Your Honor, we'd like the court to hear from Dr. Margaret Chen, a neurologist who examined Mrs. Thompson 2 weeks ago.
The doctor appeared via video conference, professional and precise in her testimony.
I performed a comprehensive neurological and cognitive evaluation of Vera Thompson. Her memory, executive function, and decision-making abilities are all well within normal range for her age. In fact, she scored exceptionally well on several assessments. There is absolutely no medical basis for a finding of incompetence. The medical documentation submitted with the guardianship petition appears to be falsified.
Falsified? You're saying the medical evidence supporting this petition is fraudulent?
I'm saying it doesn't reflect the patient I examined. Either it describes a different person, or it's simply fabricated.
The judge turned to Arthur, who sat frozen at the defendant's table.
Mr. Thompson, this court finds the evidence against you overwhelming. Not only is there no basis for guardianship, but you appear to have engaged in a deliberate scheme to defraud your wife, manipulate legal proceedings, and potentially commit elder abuse. The guardianship petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the state's attorney for investigation of possible criminal charges, including fraud, perjury, and conspiracy.
The gavel came down. Final. Absolute.
This hearing is adjourned.
Vera stood. Her legs felt strange, like they might not hold her. But they did. After 45 years of holding her up through everything else, they held her now. She walked past Arthur without looking at him, past Brenda, still sobbing in the witness box, out of the courtroom, through doors that opened onto a December afternoon so bright it hurt her eyes. Behind her, she could hear Arthur calling her name. Vera. Vera, please, let me explain. Desperation in his voice, the same way there'd been false love once. She didn't turn around, didn't look back. She'd spent 45 years turning around when he called. Not anymore.
You did it.
Wally stood by his car, waiting. He'd been in the courtroom gallery the whole time, silent support. Now he smiled, pride and relief mixing on his weathered face.
We did it. I couldn't have, without you and Sarah.
You could have. You're stronger than you knew. But I'm glad you didn't have to do it alone.
Sarah emerged from the courthouse, briefcase in hand, looking satisfied and exhausted in equal measure.
The state's attorney wants to meet with you next week. They're very interested in prosecuting Arthur and Brenda. Bribery, fraud, conspiracy. They're looking at serious charges. And Vera, you'll want to file for divorce immediately. With everything that came out today, you'll be in a very strong position for asset division.
The house
Will be yours, along with a significant portion of everything else. He committed fraud, adultery, and attempted to illegally confine you. The court isn't going to look kindly on that when it comes to splitting property.
The house. 45 years of her life lived in those rooms. Part of her wanted to burn it down, erase every memory. But another part, the part that was learning to be ruthless, wanted to keep it, to live there alone, in peace, in the space Arthur had tried to steal from her, to win completely, not just survive.
Then let's file for divorce, for everything I'm owed. I want it all back, everything they tried to take.
We'll start the paperwork tomorrow. Vera, you should be proud. Most people in your situation never fight back. They let themselves be railroaded, erased, forgotten. You didn't. You stood up and you won.
Won. There was that word again. It still felt strange. But standing there in the December sunlight, free of the courtroom, free of Arthur's voice calling her name, free of the weight of his lies, for the first time in months, Vera felt something like joy, not happiness, not yet. The wound was too fresh, the betrayal too deep, but possibility. The sense that her life wasn't over, wasn't ending in a nursing home or a quiet erasure, that it was maybe, possibly, starting again.
Let me drive you home. Unless, do you even want to go back there?
Did she? Could she sleep in that bed, walk those halls, knowing what had happened there?
Yes, I want to go home. It's my home. He doesn't get to take that from me, too.
They drove in comfortable silence, Wally respecting that she needed time to process, to breathe, to begin believing it was really over. When they pulled into the driveway, Brenda's car was gone. Arthur's too. The house sat empty, waiting.
I can stay, if you want company. Or I can go. Whatever you need.
Stay, just for a little while. I don't want to be alone with it all yet.
Inside, tea. Vera made coffee. The machine hissed and gurgled. The same sound it had made that morning 3 months ago when she'd first found salt in the sugar bowl. The beginning of everything. She poured 2 cups, added sugar, real sugar from the bowl she'd replaced with her own money from her own hidden account, handed one to Wally.
To victory.
To survival, and maybe eventually to something better than just surviving.
They drank their coffee in the kitchen that had witnessed so many lies, but now it witnessed something else. Truth. Justice. The beginning of whatever came after betrayal. Outside, the December afternoon faded into evening. Inside, Vera sat across from a friend, a real one, earned through crisis and loyalty, not assumed through marriage or family ties. And for the first time in 45 years, she felt like herself. Not Arthur's wife, not Michael's mother, not Brenda's victim, just Vera. And Vera was enough. Victory in court was one thing. Building a life after 45 years of marriage ended in betrayal. That was another. The house was hers. The money would be hers. But the question remained, Who was Vera Thompson when she wasn't defined by the man who'd tried to erase her? She was about to find out, too. The courtroom victory was swift. The aftermath was not. Legal proceedings, Vera learned, moved like glaciers, unstoppable but agonizingly slow. Days became weeks, became a month of paperwork and depositions, and waiting for the machinery of justice to grind forward. Arthur moved out the day after the hearing. He took his clothes, his computer, his golf clubs, left behind 45 years of accumulated life like it meant nothing. Maybe to him, it never had. Brenda stopped calling, stopped coming by, vanished like smoke, probably already looking for the next man with money and poor judgment. The house felt enormous without Arthur in it. Every room echoed. Every silence screamed. Vera had thought she wanted this, wanted him gone, wanted the space to herself. But the reality of it was harder than the fantasy. She'd spent 45 years as part of a pair. Being singular took adjustment. 2 weeks after the hearing, on a gray morning that threatened snow, Sarah called with news.
The state's attorney filed charges. Arthur and Brenda are both facing fraud, conspiracy, and attempted elderly exploitation. Clifford got a plea deal, probation and community service in exchange for his testimony. They're going to trial, Vera, both of them.
How long?
Trial won't be for months, but the divorce that I can expedite. With the evidence from the guardianship hearing, Arthur's lawyer is recommending he accept our terms rather than fight. He knows he'll lose.
Our terms. Vera had never imagined having terms for ending her marriage, had never imagined needing them. But Sarah had been clear about what Vera deserved, what she was owed, what the law would give her.
The house is yours. He signed the quitclaim deed yesterday. All equity, all ownership, transferred to you alone. He's also agreed to spousal support, though given his likely incarceration, the amount is modest. And there's a settlement payment. Not huge, but enough to make up for the pension funds he'll lose access to.
When?
Final divorce decree should be signed by the judge within 2 weeks. Then it's over. Legally, officially, completely over.
Over. 45 years, erased with a signature. Vera sat in the kitchen where she'd made 10,000 breakfasts, packed countless lunches, cleaned up after dinners, both celebratory and routine. All of it reduced to legal documents and property division. She should have felt relief. She felt empty instead. But emptiness, she was learning, wasn't always bad. Sometimes empty meant room to fill with something new, something better, something chosen rather than inherited or assumed. Christmas came and went without fanfare. Vera had always cooked elaborate meals, decorated the tree, hosted family gatherings. This year, she ordered Chinese takeout and watched old movies alone. It should have been depressing. Instead, it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. Wally stopped by on Christmas afternoon with cookies his neighbor had baked and a thermos of spiked cider.
Didn't want you to spend the whole day alone. Unless you want to be alone, in which case I'll leave these and go.
Stay, please.
They sat in the living room where Vera had once found Arthur and Brenda kissing in the dark. That memory should have poisoned the space, but Wally's presence somehow cleaned it, made it new again. They talked about nothing important. Weather, books, the ongoing renovations at the senior center. Normal conversation between friends who'd chosen each other rather than been assigned by marriage or family.
How are you really doing? And don't say fine. I've known you long enough to recognize the deflection.
Vera sipped her cider, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. How was she really doing? The question was harder than it should have been.
I won. That's what I wanted. Justice, vindication, everything. I got it all. So why do I feel like I lost something too?
Because you did lose something. Not the things that mattered. Not your dignity or your freedom or your future. But you lost the life you thought you had, the marriage you believed in. That's worth grieving, even if it wasn't real. Especially because it wasn't real.
Tears came then, unexpected and unstoppable. Not the angry tears she'd cried in secret while gathering evidence. Not the cold, vindictive tears of courtroom victory. Just sad, human tears for a life that had never existed except in her imagination. Wally handed her his handkerchief. Who carried handkerchiefs anymore? And waited while she cried. Didn't try to fix it or minimize it or rush her through it. Just sat beside her while she grieved the ghost of 45 years.
You're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to build something real this time. Something true. I can see it already.
Can you? Because I can't. All I see is empty space where a life used to be.
Empty space is potential. You get to decide what fills it now. No one else. Just you.
The divorce decree arrived on a Tuesday in early January. Vera opened the envelope in the kitchen, hands steadier than they'd been 3 months ago. Read through the legal language that dissolved 45 years of marriage into whereas and hereafters and parties of the first part. She signed where Sarah had marked with little yellow tabs. Her handwriting looked the same as it always had. Neat, controlled, precise. Amazing how you could end a marriage with the same hand that had signed the license beginning it. No lightning bolt, no earthquake, just ink on paper. Done. That night, Vera did something she hadn't done in 45 years. She rearranged the bedroom, moved the bed to the opposite wall, replaced the curtains Arthur had insisted on with ones she'd always wanted. Light and airy instead of heavy and dark. Threw out his pillows, his side of the closet, every trace that he'd ever shared this space. By midnight, the room looked nothing like it had that morning. It looked like hers, only hers, and when she finally climbed into bed, centered now, not pushed to one side, she slept better than she had in months. The criminal trial began in late January. Vera attended every day, sitting in the gallery while prosecutors laid out the case against Arthur and Brenda. The affair, the conspiracy, the fraud, the attempted elderly exploitation. Everything she'd uncovered presented again in even sharper detail for a jury of 12 strangers. Arthur looked smaller in the defendant's chair, diminished, the confident bank manager, the authoritative husband, gone. Replaced by a man facing prison time for trying to steal from his own wife. Brenda cried throughout the trial. Real tears this time, tears of self-pity and fear. Her lawyer tried to paint her as Arthur's victim too. Manipulated by an older man, coerced into going along with his schemes. The jury didn't buy it. Not after hearing the recordings where she'd suggested nursing homes and Costa Rica with equal enthusiasm. The verdict came down on a Friday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Both of them. Arthur got 2 years in a minimum security facility. Brenda got 18 months. Clifford, with his plea deal and cooperation, avoided jail time entirely, but lost his job and his pension. Justice served. Vera should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt tired. Tired of courtrooms and lawyers and legal proceedings. Tired of being defined by what had been done to her and what she'd done in response. She wanted to be something else now. Someone else. Not Arthur's victim. Not even Arthur's victor. Just Vera. 2 weeks after the verdict, on a morning that finally felt like spring might eventually arrive, Vera met Wally at the senior center. They'd started having coffee together twice a week. Not dates. They were both too old and too honest to pretend this was romance, but companionship, friendship. The kind of relationship built on choice and respect rather than obligation or convenience.
I heard the house sold. Arthur's house, I mean.
Arthur had been forced to sell his rental property to pay legal fees and restitution. The money would go to Vera as part of the settlement. She'd already decided what to do with it.
It did, and I've made a decision. I'm turning the guest room into a library. Actual bookshelves, a reading chair, good lighting. All the books I never bought because Arthur said we didn't have room.
Sounds perfect. What else?
What else what?
What else are you going to do with your second act? The library is a good start, but you've got years ahead of you, Vera. Decades, probably. How are you going to fill them?
How was she going to fill them? The question used to terrify her. Now it felt like possibility.
I'm thinking about volunteering more at the center. Maybe teaching that budgeting class you mentioned. I kept books for 45 years. I ought to be able to teach someone else how to do it. And I want to travel. Nothing dramatic, just see places I've always talked about seeing but never got around to.
Where first?
The Grand Canyon. I've never seen it. Arthur always said it was too commercial, too touristy. But I think that's exactly why I want to go. Because he said no, and now there's no one to tell me no except myself.
I've been to the Grand Canyon. It's spectacular. And yes, touristy, but that doesn't make it less beautiful. You should go.
She would. She really would. The thought made her smile, genuine and surprised. When was the last time she'd smiled about the future instead of just endured it? March brought rain and the first green shoots in the garden Vera had neglected during the long legal winter. She hired a landscaper to help rehabilitate it, spent weekends on her knees in the dirt, replanting and pruning and clearing away dead growth. It was metaphorical in an obvious way, but she didn't care. Sometimes the obvious metaphors were the truest. Arthur sent a letter from prison. Short, bitter, blaming her for ruining his life. She read it once, then burned it in the fireplace. He could rewrite history from his cell all he wanted. She knew the truth. The court knew the truth. That was enough. Brenda sent nothing, vanished completely, probably to lick her wounds and plan her next move. Vera didn't waste energy hoping for an apology. Some people never understood what they'd done wrong, or didn't care. Either way, they were out of her life now. Permanently. On a bright morning in mid-April, 7 months after finding salt in her sugar bowl, 6 months after the courtroom battle, 3 months after the divorce, Vera woke up in her rearranged bedroom and realized something had shifted. She wasn't angry anymore, wasn't afraid, wasn't even particularly sad. She was just herself, whole and singular and free. The doorbell rang while she was making coffee. Through the kitchen window, she saw Wally's car in the driveway. He stood on the porch holding a newspaper and 2 cups from the cafe downtown.
You brought coffee? I'm already making some.
Then you'll have extra. Consider it a celebration.
Of what?
New beginnings, fresh starts, survival. Take your pick.
They sat at the kitchen table where Vera had once discovered Arthur's betrayal, where she'd written evidence in her ledger, where she'd planned her counterattack. Now it was just a table again, just a kitchen, just a house that belonged entirely to her.
I've been thinking. We should take that Grand Canyon trip together, not as a couple. I know that's not what this is. But as friends, travel companions. 2 people who've earned the right to see something beautiful.
Vera looked at him, really looked, saw a man who'd stood by her when her own family had tried to destroy her, who'd made no demands, offered no false promises, just showed up with coffee and kindness and the patience to let her heal at her own pace.
I'd like that. I'd really like that.
Good, because I already looked at dates. There's a seniors tour group that does week-long trips. Plenty of time to actually see things instead of just rushing through. What do you think? May or June?
June, after the gardens had time to really come back. I want to leave it beautiful, so when I come home, it feels like coming back to something I built, rather than just escaping something I survived.
The words hung in the air. Coming home, to something she built. not something inherited or assigned or trapped in. Something chosen, created, hers. Later, after Wally left with promises to send her the tour information, Vera stood in the garden. The morning sun felt warm on her face. Birds sang in the trees. Spring songs, not winter ones. Around her, green shoots pushed through dark soil, reaching toward light. She'd been those shoots once, buried in darkness, struggling to break through, unsure if she'd ever see sun again. But she'd broken through, and now she was growing. Vera Mae Thompson, 70 years old, divorced, free, alive. Not someone's wife, not someone's victim, not someone's target or conquest or obstacle. Just Vera. And Vera, it turned out, was more than enough. The coffee Wally brought had gone cold while they talked, but Vera poured a fresh cup from her own pot. Added sugar from the bowl, real sugar that she'd bought and placed there herself, that no one had touched or switched or manipulated. Such a small thing, such a meaningful one. She raised her cup to the empty kitchen, to the house that was wholly hers, to the future she got to write herself.
To new beginnings.
And somewhere in the garden, in the dirt that had seemed dead all winter, a flower was beginning to bloom.
Thank you for listening to this complete audiobook. If this story touched you, please subscribe and like this video to support more quality audiobook content. Share your thoughts in the comments, we read every single one. Hit the bell for notifications about our next story. See you in the next audiobook.